Welcome into this special edition of All In. We've got a little mini episode here that's going to go just on YouTube, but I'm here, Julia Moss, here with Annabelle Watson, and we went to the WNBA Draft last night. And before we even get into it, Annabelle, I know we both had an incredible time. I'll let you take the floor first here. What were your takeaways just from maybe not the actual draft part, but just the experience in itself?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of people there that I was honestly starstruck by. We talked about that at length. Ryan Ruocco, Rebecca Lobo, Kim Mulkey. So just so many different huge names there. And, a great thing was that it was at Spring Studios, which was kind of a more intimate venue than like Barclays or MSG. So we really kind of got to be right in with the mix, and I thought that was super awesome. Another big thing was everyone who was there had amazing outfits.
Oh my gosh.
It was almost a fashion show as well. And everyone there was just so carried themselves so well. Everyone was so eloquent with their words, and everyone was just super nice as well. So overall, just a really great experience.
And we talked about this off air too, about how well spoken they were. Like you said, these players don't necessarily have at length PR experience, media training. So that's something that struck me as well as we watched the interviews after they got drafted. They all really spoke from the heart, and it was really cool to watch. For me, like you said, just getting to talk to people that we both idolize. We didn't necessarily talk to these people, but like you said, Kim Mulkey being there, your guy Gino was there.
Yeah.
Dawn Staley. Even if we didn't talk to them, just seeing them, being in the same room as them, it was crazy. It was incredible, and it really felt like a big celebration for women's sports.
Yeah, it was just really empowering. I mean, this is a very small thing, but the DJ kept playing songs from
oh my gosh,
super powerful women, Doja Cat,
Beyonce.
Ice Spice. It was a great night of just female empowerment, and it was a lot of intelligent, athletic, and beautiful women all in one space, and I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, and before the actual draft started, we walked in, and it was a meal room kind of, and we were like, okay, cool, we'll get to eat, and we walk in, and it's the athletes and the coaches are everywhere, and I was taken aback because we weren't expecting that, and it was everywhere you turned, it was a legend, or a top 10 draft pick. It was really cool, and like you said, the fits were outstanding. And I watched this video earlier today that was back in the early 2000s, late 90s through the early 2010s. It was you kind of had to wear business attire, that was the requirement, is suits or professional dresses. And it's so cool to see that change, because now they're in Gucci and Louis Vuitton. They really get a chance to express themselves through their clothes, and that's it's one of the most important days of these women's life. So having the chance to wear what you want and express yourself that way is really cool, and I think everyone wins for that, because it's really awesome to see these outfits, and I can only imagine it's really cool for them to pick them out. But
yeah, definitely.
But we're going to get into it. We're going to get in the draft now. Starting off with the first overall pick, I mean, this was no one was exactly taken aback by this in any way. Aliyah Boston from South Carolina goes to the Indiana Fever. Indiana earned this first overall pick. They went 5-31 last season, a league worst by far. And they got the best player in the draft, definitely. I mean, it hasn't been really a question this whole season. I mean, she was projected to go first overall in the preseason draft polls and never wavered from that one. So it was really cool to see, that kind of come to fruition and finally see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aliyah has been pro ready for many years, but she just, finally had to reach that eligibility and decide to quit her college career. And, I'm really excited to see Aliyah thrive in the WNBA without those, triple teams on her. I think a lot of the focus on her has been her defense, but without those triple teams, I think she's really going to be able to shine on offense. And, after Indiana having that rough season, I think Aliyah can be their new franchise player,
sure.
And I'm just really excited to see her in the W.
And they need it. Indiana definitely needs it. And something cool about Aliyah is that she's going to be able to, I think, thrive more offensively, like you said, but she's also a powerhouse defender. 2-time defensive player of the year, 3-time first-team All-American. I mean, she has made the most of her college career, to say the very least. I mean, getting a player that can do everything well, I think, is the most important thing for a team that is looking to rebuild and take a step forward, which 5-31 shouldn't be too hard to take a step forward. But yeah, they got their franchise player. They wanted her. They got her. And I think she's going to be an immediate day one impact. It's really cool to see, a rookie come into a team where, she is going to be like the team. Like she is going to be their franchise player. And, and something we'll talk about a little later with the roster spots and things of that nature. It's not very often you see a draft pick really come in and be expected to be that player. And it's cool to see Aliyah Boston stepping into that role. And I'm really excited to see how she takes on that role.
Yeah, I mean, even with her personality and like how professional she is.
She's so humble. Like,
yeah,
she's
so humble. I think she can almost, take a leadership role in the locker room immediately as well. I think she's just a great team player and great on both sides of the ball. So, as you said, I think she's really going to help Indiana make an immediate turnaround.
And something Dawn Staley said before we move on to the second pick is that, something people don't know a lot about Aliyah is how great she is, like, as a leader. So, really, I mean, if you look at every aspect, it's hard to find a real flaw in her game. So it's going to be cool to see her finally in the WNBA. I feel like we've been excited for it for quite a few years, and it's finally happening next season. And
definitely.
There's something cool about college is like college and the WNBA is seasons are not at the same time, so we don't have to wait very long to see her play.
Yeah, May 19th.
Yep.
Looking forward to it.
Oh my gosh, Sam. I'm so excited for the WNBA to be back. But moving on here to the second overall pick, and that is Diamond Miller from Maryland going to the Minnesota Lynx. She's like, I respect Diamond Miller's game so much just because she truly like worked her way up to this point. Like if you look at her stats, it's like slowly building. Like her junior year, she had a bit of a step back, but largely it's like freshman year, she built on it into her sophomore year. And then, in her senior year, she just lit it on fire and really just shot up the draft boards.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the Lynx had such a dynasty with Maya Moore, and now they're having to rebuild. But in Diamond Miller, you have a physical player. She is still kind of developing that three-point shot, but, I think with the Lynx coaching staff and the Lynx organization, she can kind of work that up and develop it into what it really needs to be. And I just think overall she's showing improvement and, exponentially. And I think in a pro organization, that's really going to help her as well.
And I think her slow build really shows how coachable she is and how willing to learn she is and how committed Diamond Miller is to working on her game. And I think in a professional atmosphere, that's the best attribute you can have. So I love this pick from Minnesota. She's also 6'3" and a guard.
Right. So
she can, she could probably guard some forwards and definitely play well against some size disadvantage or size mismatches. So definitely able to take advantage of that. I'm very excited for Minnesota because, like you said, they are trying to kind of rebuild their identity a little bit after Maya Moore. And I think they took a really good step with Diamond Miller.
Yeah, I mean, they missed the playoffs for the first time since 2010 this past season. So hopefully Diamond can kind of get them back on track. She can defend from any spot on the floor. And, like I said, hopefully she can kind of develop those offensive pieces. But just a really great pick overall for the Lynx.
And I'm excited about this next one.
Yes,
Number 3,
I know you are.
Dallas Wings pick Maddie Siegrist. And boy, I said it on All In last week. I said everyone kind of had Maddie Siegrist going a little bit lower. And I said, guys, she is not going 4. She's not going 5. She's not going 6. I projected her at the second overall pick, but I knew that was kind of a little risky. But her going 3 overall is a little bit higher than people, just a little bit higher. I think a lot of people had her going to the Mystics, but something the Wings were in an interesting position with is that they had the 3rd overall pick and the 5th overall pick. And it was clear that they wanted Maddie Siegrist. It was a matter of whether or not they wanted to risk taking someone else at 3 and then getting her at 5. But then you risk the Mystics taking her at 4. And it seemed with their 3rd pick that they had a good feeling that maybe she wouldn't still be on the board at 5. But they got Maddie Siegrist at 3. Incredible pure scorer, led the NCAA in scoring and points per game. I mean, she's just offensively incredible.
Yeah, I mean, how can you ignore the nation's top scorer?
Right.
She turned the ball over just 50 times despite how much she's used throughout the season, and she can really score from any spot on the floor, inside, on the perimeter, and she's just so impressive. You know, I do think she might need to adjust to the defense in the WNBA, but how can you ignore that offensive prowess from her? So just a really great pick by the Wings. And, you know, we'll discuss this later, but I really think they're getting a lot of the offensive power that they really have needed these past few seasons.
100%. And I'm looking at their schedule now. I'm not too familiar with the competition Villanova has. And I'm looking at this, you know, they played UConn, you know, they played some, but I think Maddie Siegrist is going to have to adjust to the increase in talent, I guess, that she's going to have to play. And yeah, that's going to be something to look at with Maddie Siegrist. But I think the offensive just tenacity she has the upside is so huge. And 29 points per game, you can't overlook that. And Dallas had so many picks, so it's really cool to see them take that first pick, you know, solve the point aspect of it. And we'll talk about this as we get to the rest of the picks. But they kind of took a pick in every kind of hole in their team, and I think their draft process was really good, starting with Maddie Siegrist from Villanova. And then moving on to the 4th overall pick, the Washington Mystics were on the clock. They picked Stephanie Suarez, and I was a little confused because, you know, the Mystics I think this was their only first-round pick, and to take a player who isn't going to play this whole season, I thought that was a little bit interesting, but then it was announced there was a trade. Stephanie Suarez was on the Washington Mystics for all of about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then she got traded to the Dallas Wings, which makes more sense because they have so many draft picks. They have the ability to draft someone with such huge upside that will not play this season. Of course, Stephanie Suarez suffering a torn ACL back in January, not expected to play this season. So at first I was very confused, but then the trade happened, made a lot more sense. And then the Mystics receive a future first round pick and a future second round pick. And we talked about this just before the show. You know, if this future first round pick is next year or the year after, they got back a huge potential asset.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in the next few years, we're going to have Paige Beckers. We're going to have Caitlin Clark probably. So to have a first-round pick in these next few years is very, very valuable. We don't know exactly which year yet, but I think that's fine because with a lot of these players, we don't know exactly which year they're going to declare.
Right.
So it's okay because, you know, you're kind of guaranteed to get a really valuable player no matter what in the next few years with a first-round pick. But as far as Suarez, you know, I think it's a testament to how good she is that teams still wanted to invest in her after she only played 13 games this season. So I think, you know, she's just an overall well-rounded player, amazing shot blocker. She can really run the floor. So hopefully she'll really make an impact on the Wings once she's fully recovered. And, you know, she mentioned in her press conference that her rehab's going really well. So hopefully we'll see her, you know, in the 2024 season.
Absolutely. So the next pick, number 5, was Dallas again. So if you really look at the draft about how everything laid out, the Dallas Wings had the 3rd, 4th, and 5th overall pick.
Yeah.
Which really puts you at a position, especially in this draft, because I said this yesterday, this draft was like sneaky really good.
Right.
People are so focused on next year and the year after, which rightfully so in a sense because you have Paige Beckers, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Flage in the next, you know, there's a scenario out there where one goes each year. Like depending on if Paige Beckers or Caitlin Clark take their 5th year, if one of them doesn't, you know, that they'll be in next year's draft. And I'm sure Paige or Caitlin, one of them is going to take their 5th year. So you could see that player going the next year, and then Angel Reese is a sophomore that year, then Flage is a freshman. The future of the WNBA is in such good hands, and it's so exciting. But back to reel it in a little bit, the 5th overall pick was such a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Lou Lopez Seneschal, her story is so incredible. I mean, her dad emailed all these colleges just to get her on a college team, and then Fairfield. She went to Fairfield for 4 years, transferred to UConn for her final year, and really hit the ground running. Really inspiring for people who go to mid-major schools like Fordham even. Like she's showing that, you know, mid-major schools can thrive and they can have a future in the WNBA. So I love this pick. She was projected to go. I mean, some people had her going in the second round. So to see her go all the way at 5, Dallas got, I think this is a good pick.
Yeah.
I was surprised at first, but then I look into it. I mean, she has a great attitude towards the game. She has a great story, really works so hard. And that's the kind of attitude you need for a pro team.
Yeah, I mean, she transformed herself into an incredibly efficient shooter at UConn. Like you said, went so much higher than projected. And, you know, as you mentioned, one great thing about her is just she's so humble and grateful. And I think she's very willing to learn.
Yes.
And, you know, that's going to be great with Dallas. And I think she's going to mesh really well with these other draft picks. But I'm just super excited for her. She was my favorite interview afterwards.
Same.
She was, talking about mid-major schools and how she kind of wants to be an idol to those in mid-major schools. And I really think she is because, she's a testament to persistence and, like I said, just being coachable and being willing to learn. So super happy for Lou Lopez. Just an amazing story, like you said. And super excited to see her get started with the Wings.
So just to recap the Dallas Wings picks, they get Maddie Siegrist, Stephanie Suarez, and Lou Lopez Seneschal. Next season, there's a real chance we could see Maddie Siegrist and Lou Lopez Seneschal on the same team. And watching college this year, that's something you didn't think was going to happen.
Yeah, great Big East representation.
Absolutely. I know you're happy about that.
Yes, definitely.
Moving on to the number 6 pick, I like this pick a lot too. I think Haley Jones went to the Atlanta Dream, 6 overall. I think she's an incredible player, incredible upside. I mean, if she won a national championship with Stanford, has played consistently her whole career at Stanford, so I'm really happy with this pick.
Yeah, I mean, she's an elite rebounder, great playmaker. She does have a little trouble with the 3-point shot, but, again, I think all these women in this draft class are so coachable and so willing to learn. So I think the same goes for Haley. She can develop that 3-point shot, and I'm super excited to see her as well with Atlanta. She's just, again, so graceful and so humble, willing to learn. So I think it'll be a great player for the Dream.
I think it's a testament to how great she is as a playmaker and a defender that she was taken this high up without being able to shoot from the outside. So, like you said, she's in a position now where she's able to develop. She's not going to be that number 1 option on the Dream. She's going to have that chance to work with professional level coaches to try and develop a good shot, because I can imagine if she's on the court day 1, she's going to be scared to shoot. That's just how that's probably how it's going to go. But if she can keep her skills up as a playmaker and defender, I think she's going to fare off pretty well. The upside in those categories really, I think, puts her in the lottery. But again, it's just because she doesn't have, that outside shot yet that we didn't see her get in the top 5. But I think the Dream got a steal here at number 6.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving on, number 7, Grace Berger goes to the Indiana Fever to join Aliyah Boston. So in wrapping up for Indiana, they get Aliyah Boston and Grace Berger, 2 really good picks, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's going to pair really well with Aliyah. The Fever was probably the worst defense in the W last year, and they got 2 great defensive players in Boston and Berger. She just has a really high basketball IQ, and, I think it's really cool that she played at Indiana and is staying in Indiana. I think probably that'll make her a fan favorite. So overall, I'm super excited to see her and Aliyah play together. I think that's going to be a great defensive duo.
Yeah, you mentioned staying in Indiana. That's going to be a great marketing chance for Indiana there.
Bless.
Yes, that was a sneeze for if anyone is listening and not watching. If you're watching, you got to see that. But yes, Grace Berger from Indiana. I'm happy with this pick, but the only thing is there's not as much upside as some other players in the draft. And we'll talk about the players that slipped pretty far down later. I think you could have seen maybe someone else here. Grace Berger is incredible, and especially because Indiana already has Aliyah Boston in this draft. They have that wiggle room to take a chance on a player that may not, have as much upside, but will be, I think someone you'll see on the court day 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get into it later, but there was a lot of surprising players who kind of slipped a little bit farther than we thought. And, this could have been a pick where you could kind of take a chance, but I do think Grace Berger will pair well with Aliyah, so we'll have to see.
Yeah, moving on here to the 8th overall pick, Atlanta Dream. Select Letitia Amier. I mean, from South Carolina. Admittedly, when you look at the South Carolina roster, like, I feel like there's some names you think of first, but that South Carolina team was so good this year. 34-0. I mean, you don't go undefeated in the regular season without every starter. And we saw, what was it, four South Carolina players got drafted. So, I mean, it's just a testament to Dawn Staley's coaching, and she's going to the Atlanta Dream, which will joining Haley Jones, I think we'll see a really, really good draft class from the Dream, including her. So really excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think she had to play in the shadow of a lot of her teammates this year, but she's very athletic, very tall. She's kind of a quiet defensive player. She had 38 blocks this past season, 30 steals. So just overall a great player who kind of did have to be in the shadow of that great South Carolina team, but still a great pick.
Absolutely. Moving on to the number 9 overall pick. I'm excited about this one. Seattle Storm select Jordan Horston from Tennessee. Go Rocky Top. I am a huge Tennessee women's basketball fan all the way back to Pat Summitt, so I love to see Jordan Horston get picked here. She was incredible. I mean, she slipped in this draft. She was not expected to still be there at number 9. So Seattle, who is absolutely trying to find their new identity. Their roster was kind of gutted this year. Losing Sue Bird, of course, and then Breanna Stewart heading to the New York Liberty. Jordan Horston might have slipped a little bit, but this is such a good place for her to be to get playing time because, again, like, this Seattle Storm team is like a shell of what it was last season.
Yeah, I mean, she's a great playmaker, and that's really needed without Sue Bird and Stewie. So I think that, it's a good fit. She's a great rebounder, and we got to see her interview as well. I think she's really fun. She's funny. She's going to be great in the locker room. So good pick for Seattle as they're trying to rebuild their identity without those two legendary players.
I think something that was really funny is Jordan Horston said she didn't know anything about Seattle other than that it was where Grey's Anatomy is.
Yeah, that was super funny.
As a fan of Grey's Anatomy, Jordan Horston gained a new fan that day.
Yes.
Yesterday. But yeah, I think Seattle, if you're a Storm fan, you're thrilled with this pick. I mean, she, like any pick this late outside of the top 5, it's always going to be about potential, not necessarily like what she is 100% going to bring, but the upside she could bring is very exciting. So if I'm the Seattle Storm, I am on the moon that she fell this far. Moving on here to the number 10th. This is another pick that I love. Los Angeles Sparks select Zia Cook, another South Carolina player. Zia is a player that you hear a lot more about because she is such an offensive talent. So, Annabelle, what are your thoughts?
I mean, she had a great tournament, so that's awesome for her. She's a great long-range shooter, as you said, and the Sparks kind of need depth at guard, which they're getting with Zia, and, we want to see her confidence go up with the three-point shot, and, I've been saying it over with every pick, basically, that can be developed in the W, but I think it's a great pick with that need for depth at guard.
Yeah, the only other thing that might be a little worrisome is her height. She's only 5'9", but she's a guard, so I think Sue Bird was 5'9", or is 5'9". Let me look that up real quick. She might be 5'10". No, she's 5'9". So Sue Bird can do it. Zia Cook can do it. But something I noticed in this draft in particular is that, like, the guards are tall.
Yeah, they're so tall.
They're like nearly all over 6 foot. So the dynamic, the landscape of the game, I think, is, if this is a sign for things to come, and even Caitlin Clark is 6 foot. So height might be becoming more and more of a factor as time goes on. So that might work against Zia Cook. But right now, I think she flashes so much potential. And she's headed to LA. That's going to be fun.
Yeah. Great spot to be.
Oh, for sure. And then, of course, the Dallas Wings picking again. This is like the WNBA Draft of the Dallas Wings. They pick Abby Myers out of Maryland. I was a little surprised to see 2 players from Maryland go in the first round. I mean, they had an incredible season, but it's really cool to see a school like Maryland have 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all of Dallas's picks, she's probably going to be a backup at the guard spot.
Yeah.
But she was a great leader for Maryland this year, and, she could be a reliable bench piece going forward. And as you said, great to see Maryland get some representation in the first round.
Yeah, and she transferred from Princeton, which is cool because Princeton is very, very good, borderline mid-major school. Fordham plays them quite a bit, and it's become a little bit of a rivalry because Fordham beat Princeton last year, lost to them this year. Princeton's very good, so Abby Myers really made the most of her time in Maryland and Princeton. Gets picked 11th overall to a very youthful Dallas Wings team. It should be interesting to see if she makes a roster, or where the Wings go from here with 4 first-round draft picks. Like, do all of them make the roster? I don't think so, but they picked some high-profile people. Like, it should be really, really interesting there.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think all of them make the roster, but definitely I would say 3 of them do. But definitely a really young team for them, which was kind of needed, obviously.
Moving on, the Minnesota Lynx with the 12th pick and the last pick of the first round, Maya Hirsch from France, center. So they, it's kind of the most obvious replacement that we saw in the draft, most like player for player kind of thing. They lose the true center Sylvia Fowles, who, absolute WNBA legend, and get a center from France and Maya Hirsch. Admittedly, don't know much about her, but she's only 19.
Yeah.
So she's not expected to play this season. She's not expected to come over from, but one of those picks where, you stash, you see how they progress, and then could end up being a game changer one day.
Yeah, I mean, only 19, so she's not going to be with the Lynx this year, but she's a great shooter, very athletic, very agile, so she could potentially be a great asset once she matures, but we'll see how she develops overseas.
Yeah, 19 and a 12th overall pick. That's incredible.
That's so impressive.
But we're going to switch gears a little bit to some more overall broad opinions, and we're going to start with, we're not necessarily going to go over the second and third round pick for pick, but Annabelle, I want to hear from you. What player, first of all, we'll start with what player slid way further, and this could be in the first round or the second round or the third round. What player were you surprised to see go a lot later than you thought?
Well, I mean, I think that, we discussed this at length at the draft and after. Seeing Brea Beal go so low was definitely surprising. I know there's concerns with her three-point shot, but she's a great perimeter defender. I do have some concern for her because the Lynx are so deep now with Diamond. They play the same position, so, we'll see what happens with the roster and such. But I was definitely surprised to see Brea go so low.
Yeah, and I think, the chat around the draft was like, people are worried about her offensive ability against better teams, and you look at how she performed against Iowa in her last game at South Carolina, only scored 3 points in 35 minutes. That's worrying, but, everyone has a bad game. Yeah. Really, like, super unfortunate timing, of course, for, when all the eyes are on you to not play well, but I don't think it warranted that far of a slide. And I agree with you on the player that I'm most surprised slid as far as she did. And that has to be Brea Beal. I mean, everyone was like looking at each other like, when is she going to get taken? Because, she's got the size. She's over 6 foot, guard, can most of the time can shoot. I think her upside is so big. I think, this is an absolute steal for them to get her that late.
Yeah, I mean, I also think we've discussed, players who are more developed offensively and those who are more developed defensively. I almost favor those who are more developed defensively
100%.
In the W just because of the physicality of it. So I think for Brea to slip so far with her defensive talent is definitely interesting. So big steal for the Lynx.
I'm also surprised Dorka fell to the 16th pick. She was a fringe first/second round pick, but I didn't think she'd make it 4 into the second round. But if there's one thing I took away from this, that the Lynx really know how to take advantage of a player that's slipping, because they got Dorka and Brea Beal. They should definitely be thrilled about the way their draft went, but yeah, Dorka and Brea are definitely the two players I was surprised to see fall as far as they did, because you look at Dorcas, she had, she's 5 years. Like she has some injury history, of course, but when she's on the court, I think she's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, she's good in the paint and outside. She hasn't been super consistent on the three, so that probably was the reason for her slipping. But, again, another steal for the Lynx, like you said.
So my next question, which player, well, first, we didn't prep this question, but I do want to say, like, players that we're surprised weren't drafted. I have a couple. I think I told you this at the draft. I think Keishana Washington should have been drafted. I mean, she averaged like 39 points a game or something. Well, not 39. She averaged like 28 points a game, like right under Maddie Siegrist. Was Drexel good? No. But we personally got to see Keishana Washington close and up in person against Fordham, and she's just a force on the court. I'm surprised she wasn't drafted. And then Brooke Flowers, an A10 St. Louis center who led in blocks. I mean, she's so tall, has a lot of upside. I'm really surprised she didn't get drafted. But moving on more to the positive side, which player do you think is going to make, a day one impact?
Yeah, so my pick for this was Alexis Morris to the Connecticut Sun, 22nd overall. Connecticut's, kind of going through a big transition with their roster right now. They need point guard depth. And, to get Morris that late with their first pick was a steal. She was a very, very important piece during the LSU title run. And, maybe I'm a little biased because we saw that nice moment between her and Coach Mulkey.
Right.
But, and also being from Connecticut. But I think Alexis Morris will make a big impact on the Sun, especially considering the transition and transformation they're going through.
Absolutely, and I agree. 100% agree. As far as like sneaky first round impacts, I'm gonna stay in the first round. Man, there's so many. Oh my gosh, so many really good picks. But what I'm gonna go with, as far as people who aren't expected, I'm going to say Lou Lopez Seneschal is going to make like a really like surprising impact. Like I could see her like in the top 3 on her team in scoring. And the Wings are in a situation where they want to develop youth. So I think she's going to get a shot to play next season, and I think she's going to make the most of it. But before we wrap up, I just want to give a couple quick shout outs. Monica Sonano going to the Sparks. I'm excited for that. Going in the 3rd round, not sure if she's going to make the team. I really hope she does because her upside is incredible. She has such an ability to make her presence felt in the post, both offensively and defensively. She can score so much without even putting the ball on the floor. I think it's incredible. But before we wrap up, we got to listen to the WNBA commissioner yesterday in her state to the WNBA, and I want to talk about something she highlighted a lot, and that is the potential expansion of the WNBA. She made the point that, we don't want to rush into it and put potential new owners in a really bad spot. And I understand that, but I think the WNBA is in a position now with all the influx of really great talent, and not to say there hasn't been great talent in the past, but more eyes are on the WNBA now. And more people are starting to realize, like, whoa, like, Zia Cook might not make the roster and she's a number 10 overall pick. Like, people are starting to realize that the structure of the WNBA right now is just not working. And I want to hear your opinion on this. We've talked about it a bit, but yeah, what are your thoughts on the way that the WNBA is going about expanding? Because for people who don't know, there's only 12 teams. I think there's 12 roster spots on each team. So, do the math there. Not a lot of roster spots for WNBA.
Right. There's kind of been this debate between, do you expand roster sizes or do you expand and
teams,
add 2 more teams? And I do favor expanding the rosters because, like you said, there's these big name players where you're like, oh my gosh, they're not even gonna make the roster probably. And I think I would rather highlight players on pre-existing teams and kind of boost up the market for existing teams rather than have to go out and create these new teams. And I think it's just going to add more talent and more depth to these teams because no matter how much we don't want to admit it, the WNBA isn't as marketable as the NBA, and they are kind of on the up and up. So I think it's almost too risky to add those two teams where, I think with this position, the W's in right now, they should capitalize on kind of what they already have and expand those rosters instead.
I just think you can do both. Like, that's my thing. Add roster spots for right now as, a bit of a stopgap until you feel like owners know what they're getting into. Right. And you can find those teams, because making expansion teams is really difficult. Like, it's a headache. Like, it's a huge, like, business. There's a lot of moving parts in creating a new team into a league. Like, I've gotten familiar with the process just through NWSL, because it feels like in on the soccer side, there's a new expansion team every year.
Right.
And if the NWSL can do that, I don't understand, like, what's going on with the WNBA, because I follow the NWSL very, very closely. And it feels like every time there's, like, fan support in a city and we're like, we really want a team, a couple years later they get a team. Like, if soccer can do it, maybe I'm being naive and maybe this is an ignorant comment, but I really just don't understand why it's so difficult for the WNBA that's been here since the late 90s to expand from 12 teams, when the NWSL, who made the league in 2010.
Yeah.
Like, they've only been around for 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely very frustrating, and hopefully we can see it come to fruition soon.
Right.
But I do think one of the two moves should be made, and I think that expanding the roster is kind of a good way to bridge the gap in between what we have now and potential expansion teams.
I think there are multiple solutions, but doing nothing is not one of them.
Exactly.
And that is what the WNBA is doing right now.
Exactly.
But that's just not going to do it. I had a really great time talking about the draft. It was a lot of fun to be there. Yes. I can't explain enough, like, how much of a cool experience it was being able to see these players' lives be changed, move from collegiate player to professional player. WNBA season is starting very soon. I'm excited to get into that on All In. But until then, thank you so much for listening. This has been a production of All In.